Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us again. Our next session is Friends of Gadsden Creek, and you just had a little view of their website, and we encourage you to go to www.friendsofgasdencreek.com and learn more. But we have two of the advocates, the community activist advocates, with us today to talk about what's going on with Gadsden Creek, what's going on with the Gadsden Green community, and the community-based solutions, and also how you can help. Drop your questions, folks. This is a good one. Let me go ahead and bring them in. Sab, how are you?
Hey, what's up? Good morning.
Good morning to you, and thank you for joining us today. Definitely appreciate you coming, and I am really looking forward to this and listening and learning more. And of course, let's bring in Mika Gadsden of the Charleston Activist Network, and of course, Friends of Gadsden Creek. And I've watched your podcast a couple times, Mika. You're muted, Mika. Go ahead and unmute there so we can hear you.
Yeah, I was just laughing. I wanted to keep my cackle off mute, but I appreciate you engaging with my content. It's definitely spicy, but speaking truth to power. So thank you so much for having us here to support and lift up the work of Friends of Gadsden Creek.
Very good, very good. So y'all drop your questions. This is a good one, and these are the things we need to support. Not only what Green Quet talked about earlier, but when these are community-based solutions, I'm passionate about people knowing there are people in the communities who are doing the work. And all too often they are not recognized. People like to come in and rescue people. No, we don't need y'all to come rescue us. You need to come and work with us. And that's a totally different mindset. And that's why we have these community-based solutions here at the Gullah Geechee Environmental and Energy Conference. I'm going to let y'all take over and share with us who's the Friends of Gadsden Creek. What's the issue Gadsden Green community is facing, and what are the community-based solutions, and what can we provide as resources? And basically, one of the things we can do is kind of get out of your way, but still provide the help. But anyway, thanks for coming on, and I'll see you guys in a few minutes.
All right, cool. Maybe we should just introduce ourselves real quick, Mika.
Absolutely, Seb, you go first.
All right, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Seb Che. I use they, them pronouns. Very excited to be at this conference today. Good morning, everyone. I've been organizing with Friends of Gadsden Creek for going on 2-3 years, something like that at this point. But my background is in architecture, specifically looking at how the built environment and our cities have inequality baked into these systems and how we can imagine alternatives to those systems. So specifically, I was focusing on anti-gentrification and housing justice. So when I got to Charleston and learned about the Gadsden Creek campaign, immediately felt that I had to get involved and got to meet great people like Mika to organize alongside. And yeah, it's been a great part of my life. So happy to share this work with you all.
Yeah.
To you, Mika.
Yeah. That just took me down memory lane. Remembering when I first met you, Seb. But yes, my name is Mika Gadsden. I like to describe myself as a daughter of Jim Crow refugees. I myself was born and raised in New Jersey. However, my father is a native of Wadmalaw Island. And both he and my mother left the South. My mother left North Carolina. My father left South Carolina, and sought out, just like many other folks displaced by Jim Crow. Sought out some other educational and economic opportunities. But I returned home in 2014. I'm also a St. Andrews Rocks, class of 99, one of the last couple of classes that existed over at St. Andrews in West Ashley. So my story is my Come Ya Been Ya story. I'm a Come Ya Been Ya hybrid, I like to say, because I did graduate high school down here in the South. I am an activist, but I leverage media, social media, digital platforms to challenge power, specifically here in the Low Country in South Carolina. I am a disruptor. I am a social irritant. I am a gadfly. And I think that makes me uniquely qualified to be a friend of Gadsden Creek. The last name just happens to be a coincidence, or actually a vestige of this city's past, which is, of course, the trafficking of enslaved Africans. And it is that history that centers our work here with the Friends of Gadsden Creek. So I'm honored to be here with Seb.
Right on. Cool. I think I'm already sharing my screen, but maybe whoever's moderating could
yeah.
make it pop up. Yeah. Maybe Lorenzo can give them a minute or two.
Yeah, we have a presentation, folks. So we're trying to bear with us. If you're watching, we have a slide presentation that we're trying to share our screen with so that you all can see quite clearly the work that we've led. Push comes to shove, if I have to hop off and try to share mine, I don't know if that'll help, but
yeah, it says it's sharing, but I think from their end they need to make it pop up.
Okay. I don't know. Yeah, if anyone can give us the green light. Yeah.
I'll text Alana from tech support. I wonder if I can toggle between.
Yeah, I was just about to hop into the actual event and see if we are, if our presentation is showing.
Okay.
Let me see if I can.
I feel like it's not though.
Me neither.
Oh, she said she's gonna, Alana's gonna make it pop up. I think they have to do it from their end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're wanting to share PowerPoint just to have a media-rich presentation and show you some of the photos and videos that depict our work, just so everyone can get a fuller picture of what we got. Take advantage of the tools that we have.
Right.
Cool. I think we should be good now.
Oh, good. Perfect. Great.
Cool.
All right.
Right on. So yeah, here's an image from a mutual aid event that we were conducting in Gadsden Green recently. On the right-hand side, you can see an image of the creek. We'll share some clear photos in a moment. But yeah, we wanted to kick it off by sharing a video with you all. Hopefully the sound works properly.
Yeah, I'm looking at the comments. I'm keeping an eye on the comments.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we're going to share this 5-minute video from Now This News, which was released earlier this year as a feature of our work. And we think it shows the story from many different angles and has some fun footage. So without further ado, I'll share that. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're going to share this.
We're trying to tell Charleston that the way they've gone about doing business, the way they've gone about planning their growth has had adverse effects on predominantly African American communities and poorer communities in Charleston. This community that's situated directly next to the creek used to thrive, used to live off the creek.
There's a very rich community that is engaged directly with the water. We have photographs of a baptism happening in Gadsden Creek. We have evidence of the creek being a rich ecosystem for local fishing and commerce. We see it as a place of recreation, of joy, of gathering. This is the project that lives on to this day as the Public Housing Authority. Although today it's no longer technically racially segregated, it's still majority Black, 99% people of color. This is an instrumental moment in history because it's a seizure of property from Black homeowners being transferred to the city.
This is a perfect case of environmental racism.
2012, our Charleston Mayor Joe Riley, who's notorious in the area as being an extremely ambitious developer with much capital power, creates the Horizon Foundation, now known as West Edge. Luxury condos, parking structures, high-end office and commercial space, all of this obviously not catered to the needs of the residents just 500 feet away from this development.
Flooding in Charleston, South Carolina is no secret. And we're telling them that this title march still works. And if we revitalize it and invest in its revitalization, it actually would help folks with flooding. It would help, remedy that issue.
We partnered with the South Carolina Environmental Law Project, who wrote a letter to SCDHEC on behalf of Friends of Gadsden Creek, outlining very clearly how the West Edge permit application is illegal, violating not only local but federal law. And we think this is incredibly important because we now are not only appealing to perhaps the moral ethics of state level regulators or developers, we now have a legal defense to say, really, if this permit goes ahead, we have grounds to make a lawsuit.
Cool. Thanks for your attention, everyone. And as just an update to that last part of the video, since that video was released, in fact, the state level regulators, DHEC, did approve the permit application to fill and destroy Gadsden Creek. So, we did exactly what we were saying in the video and partnered up with a great team of legal experts at the South Carolina Environmental Law Project. And as you'll see in this short video clip, we did indeed file a lawsuit together to block this proposal.
The South Carolina Environmental Law Project has filed a lawsuit to protect a historic creek in downtown Charleston from being partially filled. News 2's Kate Prestag joins us now live in studio. And Kate, you've been following this issue between developers and the community members for months now. What does this legal action mean for that area?
Well, Sophia, those of the Law Project tell me that there will be an automatic stay, which means developers cannot continue their plans of construction for a number of months. Now, the developer West Edge says that their purpose was to build shops, homes, and restaurants to support the Medical University and create economic development on the west side of the Charleston Peninsula. The request for the contested case by the law firm came on behalf of the Friends of Gadsden Creek, a group consisting of 850 community members. This after state health officials said development could begin on Gadsden Creek back in June. The firm says the creek is still functioning and is one of the last remaining tidal creeks on the peninsula. It's also a critical area and should have been protected better by the state's own provisions.
We're certainly concerned and somewhat baffled by how DHEC could issue this critical area permit given the language in its own regulations and in the statutory policies and regulatory policies they're supposed to follow. The critical areas are supposed to be given high protections, and here it doesn't appear that they were.
In regard to the lawsuit, West Edge says in part it is unfortunate that the filing by the South Carolina Environmental Law Project will delay much needed relief for the West Side community, but the West Edge Foundation remains steadfast in its commitment to address the challenging situation with positive results. We'll have their full statement on our website, counton2.com, later tonight. Reporting live in studio, I'm Kate Prestak, Count on 2. The South Carolina.
Great. So, yeah, just as these two videos show, this campaign is very much present conflict. You know, this news clip just came out a week or two ago. So this is something that's really actively unfolding. So we just wanted to start off with that before kind of going a little bit back in time to thinking about the Gadsden Green community's history on the west side of Charleston. Just to say, you know, this isn't historical, this is happening now. Environmental justice is an issue that, you know, as Queen Quet was saying, you know, reaches back into history 10, 20, 30 years, but is also very present with us today. So if I could get the screen shared back again.
The South Carolina Environment.
Mika.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you, Seb, and thank you for those listening and watching this presentation. Thank you for your time. I want to take a moment now and just ground this conversation. I was as I was backstage in our virtual backstage space listening to Queen Quet, you know, I was encouraged by her offerings to this conversation. Shout out to the commenters popping up there. Thank you, Ebony. Just want to make sure I don't get distracted by the comments. But I was encouraged to make sure that we ground this conversation in history. I want folks to understand that Friends of Gadsden Creek is a multicultural coalition. And as Queen Quet lifted up in a portion of her presentation, allyship is important, right? I think Friends of Gadsden Creek has taken it a step forward, and also while looking for allies in this fight, but we're also encouraging folks to be more of accomplices in this space, and that's what we want ultimately to come of our work. Not ultimately, but one of my goals. Let me speak for myself. One of my goals is to make sure that we bring on others who are not just here to just help us and lift up the words, but actually, you know, roll up their sleeves and help us in this very real fight. But to do that, you have to understand the history of this area. It's this area, Gadsden Green, the Gadsden Green projects, the Gadsden Creek is situated in a space that's informally or culturally or known around the way as Back to Green. Back to Green is a place that still enjoys many characteristics that are reminiscent of the past. I want to make sure that as we continue to tell you and illustrate what the problem is and how we're choosing to engage in this fight, this environmental justice fight, I want you to know we're fighting for the history and not just this resource, this natural resource. Yes, we want to revitalize it. We want the city to invest in its revitalization, but we also want the city to invest in the other very, very important resources, which is the humans, the families, the children, the many lives that live over in Gadsden Green and Back to Green. Here, the first slide I have here is just one of many amazing historical milestones that this area has given birth to. You see here pictured on this slide, the Cannon Street All-Stars. I have a quote from a Washington Post story. This was written about 2012, but I just wanted to read it aloud. The Cannon Street YMCA is near the Ashley River, which flows toward the harbor in Fort Sumter. The unpleasantness that started there in 1861 had left pertinent questions unsettled 94 years later, when the All-Stars and all African Americans decided to enter the city's Little League tournament. Right? Charleston canceled the tournament because blacks and whites simply did not play together. That's just an excerpt of the largest story. The Cannon Street All-Stars played in Harmon Field, which is situated right across from the housing projects. And I wanted to use this story because I wanted to lift up the tradition of joy that emerges from this area. Seb, would you mind proceeding to the next slide? Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I also want to lift up a tradition of resilience. Here is a newspaper clipping from the News and Courier, which is now, of course, the Post and Courier. And this is the story of Shirley Chavis. She sued the city because she, like many other Black families, pushed to this area, Black families who had their land or their property taken from them generations before. She actually demonstrated what we all in African-American communities and Gullah Geechee communities, what we all know to be true, is that she fought. I think there's an unfortunate assumption made about Black people and environmentalist issues. We've always been environmentalists. We've always been fighting. We've always been advocates for ourselves. We've always stood up and we've always resisted. We resisted when we were in bondage. We resisted through fugitivity. But we've always mounted an effort to fight for ourselves. And Shirley Chavis in this lawsuit that came about in 1971 is illustrative of this resilient tradition that also emerges from Back to Green. And I just want to say specifically, Shirley was lifting up the issues that she was enduring, because not only has the city filled in hundreds and hundreds of acres of this wetland resource to create more real estate, they also created a dump that Black people had to live around. So basically, this is an environmental injustice that was visited upon Black people. And this is a practice that's pervasive throughout the country. Think Cancer Alley, down in the Delta area. So this was visited upon Black people intentionally, and it had ramifications on health, quality of life, and what Shirley lifted up here, the refuse that was in the area, the dump, created pest issues for folks who lived there. So when you think about environmental activism, in Charleston, you can't erase the scores of Black people and families who actually voiced opposition to some of these policies and ordinances and injustices. And I can go to the next slide. Thank you so much, Seb. The last piece of tradition that I wanted to lift up that I think is important, with joy, with resilience, but also resourcefulness. After the 1938 tornadoes that you saw referenced in the Now This video, Black folks always tried to find a way to rebuild their communities and maintain their home ownership. Now, that wasn't afforded to this population, but what I wanted to do is lift up this practice of agricultural, I guess, enjoyment. I don't know how to say this. I'm a city girl, you could tell. But Black folk in this area, they held farmers fairs, and there were a lot of activities. I think there are so many people we've encountered through this fight that have memories of these fairs that took place. But one practice was the Colored Farmers Fair. And what I learned in my research of the Colored Farmers Fair here in Charleston was that it was likely a part of a broader network. I have a clip here to the left of the actual news clipping, and I'm going to read from it. A small group of Black farmers organized the Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Union in Houston County, Texas, on December 11th, 1886. After the alliance received a charter from the federal government in 1888, Humphrey began organizing chapters throughout the South. It established exchanges in ports of Charleston, Houston, Mobile, New Orleans, and Norfolk. Right, and I want to stop it there, but just I wanted to lift this up because it's important to understand that Black folk lived off the land. They live in concert with natural resources. They were very adept when it came to agriculture, when it came to working with water, sustaining themselves from the water. They were one with nature, and they learned how to live with nature. And it was a resourceful community here that used what they had to live and to sustain and to raise their families. And so when we talk about environmental justice issues, especially as it pertains to Black and Gullah Geechee folk, we have to lift up the traditions of resilience, the traditions of just things that communicate to me that folks didn't just lay down and take it. These were dynamic individuals. These were exceptional individuals who've always fought, and we're just picking up where they left off. And I'll leave it there.
And this is just a another image from the Colored Farmers Fair where Black farmers would come with their livestock, and oftentimes there would be kind of contests and competitions, see who has the best livestock, get to show off your wares. And we think these historical images are very powerful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those. Absolutely. And there's so much proof. But yeah, I just want to say, leveraging the archive, what I did in those past few slides was y'all just please come in contact with this history. Once you know the history, it informs your fight for justice. Sorry to interrupt you, Seb.
No. And I'll pass it to continue. Just where is Gadsden Creek? Where is Gadsden Green? Some people probably have never been to this area.
And yep, and I love to confess I was one of those people as a person who has traveled and enjoyed Back to Green in so many ways. I've been to Burke countless times. Shoot, I even had to go to summer school for math at Burke High School. Back when I was younger, never knew that this creek was here. And for those who don't know where the creek is, I want you to know that it's not your fault. This creek was hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of acres, Seb. And it was dumped on over time and reduced to what we have now, which is about 4 acres of natural tidal wetlands. So if you see this picture right here, this portrait, this zone photo for Mr. Bramlett, you'll see on the right of the picture the Gadsden Green housing projects, and then to the left, thank you. Yep, and then to the left, you'll see the remaining engineered portion of the creek. So when I say engineers, because this creek was sprawling, but it has been re-engineered by the city since the 50s to resemble like what you see there, which is like a little stream right across from the Gadsden Green project. So when you see that flooding on Haygood and whatnot right across there, that's because the creek has been prevented from doing its natural function, which is to help absorb some of that overflow. Water's just going to go back home, y'all. Water's going to go back home, and that creek was just is still trying to perform its function, its natural function.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
And here's just some more aerial photographs to kind of ground people. In the last image, we see the Citadel down here, down Haygood. I just got a text from Mary saying the feed is frozen now. Is it looking okay for you, Mika?
It was fun. Yeah, I haven't. Yeah,
okay. People,
if
there's issues, please drop things in the chat, in the comments, and we'll try to resolve that. Hopefully that works out for Mary. So just some more aerial photographs showing this context. Right, Mika, we have Gadsden Green right here, the creek right here.
Yeah.
And this, like, the way this is kind of this, rectangular shape, that does not look natural, right?
No, it's very unnatural. And I'm glad you used this other vantage point.
Could happen,
I'm sorry.
reminding people that there are people.
Sorry, I'm seeing all good. Everything's working on this thing. There's a little bit of a lag, but it looks like maybe Mary might be having personal, some other issues.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I'm glad you used this other vantage point because again, it shows you that it looks more like a stream. I think we've heard language all like a ditch, or I don't know, other language from those who are in favor of filling the creek. They've used all these terms to diminish what it really is, but it's actually still very much a creek, and it performs very much like one.
Right. And you can just see all of this parking lot has been developed, directly on top of these wetlands. You see the Ashley River in the distance, and you see the West Edge development, the largest development in the history of downtown Charleston, encroaching. And you kind of see that Gadsden Creek and these remaining 4 acres of wetlands are kind of the only things standing between this development and the Gadsden Green community, which is why I think it's like a really powerful symbol for this fight. You can even see this road here, bisecting, just kind of choking the creek right here as it goes into a culvert or a pipe underneath the ground.
Right.
So it's kind of this like final barrier.
Yeah, and we're going to get to it in other slides, but basically, y'all, what you see with that parking lot outside of the red bubble, that all was the creek. That was all wetland.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you so much for grounding us in this history of resilience, because I think that's really the perspective that we try to bring to the table when thinking about history in a critical way, so that we can avoid repeating these patterns. And the way that things are looking right now is very much repeating all these patterns throughout the decades. So now we're just going to walk through some of that history. And just to say, we have many resources on our website, which Marilyn helpfully shared earlier, friendsofgadsdencreek.com. We have flyers, we have timelines that you can print, either black and white or color, and distribute them, absorb them. We encourage you to do so. But we're going to use this one sheet as kind of a tool to walk through some of this history. So the amazing archival research that Miko was,
It looks like there's one question I wanted to lift up really quickly from Marilyn in the comment section. Do they have flooding problems now because they filled the creek? Just wanted to lift that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. Yes, there are massive flooding problems on the west side neighborhood, sunny day flooding, tidal flooding. There's some incredible photos now being released. There are a whole kind of expose stories on Post and Courier about these rising tides that just have 6 to 10 feet of water. People are blocked from going to work. People are blocked from going to school. Cars are being flooded. This is kind of like a common problem. I forget how many days out of the year this area is flooded, but it's a lot. It's like dozens of days, Mika. Yeah.
Yep.
So absolutely, the flooding is an issue because they filled in the creek. And this is not unique to Charleston. Many cities have done this, and they're all dealing with the consequences now of climate change and rising tides. So, but to rewind to maybe a more positive time in terms of connection with the water, where the water wasn't destroying your car and stopping you from getting to work, but it was actually providing a platform for the Gadsden Green community to, celebrate their own culture. In the 1870s to 1910s, this area was called Butchertown, which was kind of a meatpacking district, majority populated by African Americans and immigrant populations. And you see at this very beginning period, you see this photo on the bottom right that the creek provides an important place for rituals such as baptisms depicted here. You see in this point of history, people's houses right alongside the creek, using it for fishing, commerce, recreation, as well as youth were using this area to go swimming. And we see that one of the first examples of the kind of policing of Black bodies in this area is around this youth recreational activity where these children were swimming in many different areas around the city, but the Charleston Police Department kind of made a mandate that said, you can only go swimming recreationally in Gadsden Creek. And we suspect this is because it was a less desirable area, and it wasn't an area where, the city had to save face. They could just kind of put these youth over here and then not have to worry about them. So even though there's this strong connection with the water, you're already seeing in the late 1800s this policing behavior. Anything to add, Mika?
No, I thought that was really helpful. No, I don't have anything to add.
I'll just pause at the end of each slide.
Yeah.
You want to chime in. So this is just a blown up image of that baptism that we were mentioning before. And obviously you can see the difference between today and then, in that this relationship has been severed. Many Gadsden Green community residents don't know that it exists, let alone that it was such an important place for gathering. So that's something that we think in the framework of reparations that we need to think about, and that we need to take account for what was severed, for what was lost, and work to restore and even go beyond. So then, as this video showed some of that photography of the tornado, the infamous 1938 tornado in Charleston, which tore through the city, it damaged many of the homes in the Gadsden Green area. And we see this as an opportunity for the city, where they take the mayor at the time, I believe Mayor Morrison, or maybe it was Lockwood, I think Morrison saw this as an opportunity to claim these properties. And as we shared, this was the largest group of property owners in Charleston, which we can't stress enough, the difference between being a tenant, a renter, and a property owner in terms of generational wealth, access to opportunity. But at this point, there's a trend going across the entire United States in the 40s of urban renewal, where private single-family homes are being seized by the city, and then in their place, they're putting up uniform public housing. And this is a massive transition, and that, of course, if you're a tenant within public housing, you don't own your own property. You're at the whims of the city. And in the case of Gadsden Green and Charleston, this is racially segregated. So even though this community was, majority Black and immigrant before, now it's kind of mandated into law that you have this separation between, Black tenants in public housing and then white property owners in Charleston. You see this kind of divide. And as Nika was helpfully pointing out, this, was not without resistance. And you see here on this image on the right, illustrating a group of Gadsden Green residents that gathered in 1940 to write a letter to Mayor Lockwood. They say, this is not a slum district, which the city was claiming to demolish these houses. This is the largest group of colored property owners in any single area in the city of Charleston. To go out now and live in rented homes would not be fair to our children nor to us, as it would leave a flood of mortgages for our children to struggle with. And you can see here in the bottom left, Teddy Foster Grocery. Theodore Foster was one of the original signers of this 1940 document. So you see that, generations pass and these families are still around, and they were in complete self-awareness about what this decision was going to mean for themselves and for the following generations. And of course, the mayor wrote back and said, sorry too late, we received your letter, but there's nothing we can do. The decisions have already been made. Yeah,
I wanted to lift up in the comments. Ebony has asked a couple of questions regarding the natural habitat. Thank you, Ebony, for contributing to this conversation, because we do want to make it interactive as possible as we get through the slide deck. But Ebony, you asked about the effects, the impact. Oh, you asked about the water connectivity. So I think, of course, like the creek is of its own, is still its own tidal marsh. But I think when you talk about pollutants, and Seb, you can keep me honest here, when you talk about pollutants and drinking quality, there has been an assertion, a false assertion by those in favor of filling the creek, filling the last remaining 4 acres, that it's polluted beyond repair. And that's just not true. This body of water is similar to, you can compare it to Shem Creek, and they ain't talking about filling that. You can compare it to other bodies of water as well. Even right across the way over there, Brittlebank Park, you can test that water as well. You'll find a comparable composition, or a comparable, I don't know what the term is said, but you'd find the similar water qualities there. I would say what really the pollutants that the city should be concerned with is the years and years of literal landfill, the Citadel, the Joe. There are areas over there that are built literally on land. It's a landfill. It's literally garbage. And so the creek is not a source for pollutants. The city's practice of dumping on communities to create more real estate, that's the issue that the city will have to reckon with in the near future. I'll leave it there.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm just doing a time check. I think we're almost 45 minutes already into our presentation. So I feel like maybe I'll try to move a little faster through the history so we can get to our campaign, because I think that now this video did really cover it well. So you see now in the 50s and 70s exactly what Mika is talking about in terms of this area. You see this image, 1954. This is all wetlands. This is all Gadsden Creek. And then you just see this kind of brutal dumping of municipal waste to fill this area to become valuable space for real estate development. In relation to Marilyn's question earlier about flooding, absolutely, yes, this is an issue. These are just a few of those images that show this area being flooded because of this poor management of the water system. And you see, again, the Shirley Chavis lawsuit happens in the 70s and 80s. The federal government steps in, and the Department of Justice actually slaps Charleston on the wrist and says, what you're doing here is illegal. You have to stop now. And Charleston, after trying to get away with it for a bit longer, is kind of forced to apply for a permit and promise that they won't do any more filling after they've already done this amount in 1973. And then you see the revival of the desire to fill this wetland in 2012, as Mayor Joe Riley, as this video showed, begins the West Edge development, which is the development that's continuing today. Naturally, the Gadsden Green community is not engaged in the decision-making process. Environmental justice principles are not followed in terms of the consideration of community benefits, and that lands us where we are today. So again, if you want to dive deeper into this history, this timeline is available on our website. And just bringing it to the modern day, yeah. Mika, did you want to say something?
No,
You're just laughing.
I just
We
responded.
just wanted to show an A/B image of, you see here on the right-hand side, this is from the Gadsden Green hashtag on Instagram, someone, having to bike through these floodwaters just on their way to work or wherever they need to go. On the left-hand side, you see the luxury Caroline apartments and condos, which are 500 feet away from the development. Very different relationship to the water. We have rooftop pools. So we just want to point out this disparity, just to say it wasn't always this way.
Yeah.
And that brings us, to where we are now in terms of this campaign of resistance, with Friends of Gadsden Creek really formulating in opposition to the West Edge permit around 2015. And yeah, Mika's been organizing with the campaign longer than I have, but how do you say the campaign has kind of developed over the years?
In terms of like our appeal to the public and trying to galvanize, I think we've done well. I think we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. And I want to say again, thank you, Marilyn, and to your fellow organizers. We wouldn't be here had our voices not started to resonate with folk. And I think too, I want to harken back to Queen Ket during her presentation. She really referenced a lot of like grassroots, really commonplace ways to engage people. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this information accessible. I think we're modeling what multicultural organizing looks like, that centers the Black experience. Not enough environmentalist groups, especially the big ones, not enough of them center Black and marginalized communities, center the Gullah Geechee history and culture. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I think that has given us credibility with so many people. And I think we're doing well with our campaign.
Yeah. Thank you, Mika. And I think this addresses exactly what Marlena just asked in terms of what kind of work, do we do with residents regarding their city housing issues. Our campaign has different facets. We'll show up and make a ruckus at city council. We'll make podcasts and videos about this or artwork. We'll work on the legal side of things. And then we'll also conduct mutual aid events and work to build tenant power in Gadsden Green. And this image, you can see a Zoom call during the pandemic, when we weren't able to gather in person, as well as in pandemic times when we did our best to distribute meals in collaboration with Hannibal's Kitchen in Charleston to try to build and strengthen these connections. So absolutely, tenant organizing is essential in terms of highlighting a bottom-up approach that centers tenant and resident needs in the community rather than us, dictating what we think is the proper solution. So you can see some examples of that here. It's of course a work in progress and can always be improved. Ideally, I don't know if you agree, Mika, but I would love for Friends of Gadsden Creek to be fully led by Gadsden Green community members in the future, lifting up the leaders that we're already working with, like, John pictured here, Donna passing out food here. But we think in order to build that trust and that connection, you can't show up empty-handed. So during the pandemic, a lot of that has shown up as bringing food for all 370 residents in Gadsden Green.
Yeah. There was a question here, but before we proceed with the question from Ashley Lavin, you can leave it up there because I do want to address it. We're responsible first and foremost to the folks directly impacted by this environmental justice. And so how we show up, I would say, Seb, especially, I'm going to give Seb their flowers. Seb has modeled for me how important it is to show up for these residents when we're not doing a mutual aid, when we're not actively working on the creek and advocating for the issue, how to show up and how to incorporate and include the Black residents and families that reside in Gadsden Creek, in the Gadsden Green projects. So we show up. We definitely partner with other groups that also are working in housing justice. We've invited them. We work closely with them with various activities. And so we can't, all oppression is linked. Environmental injustice is linked to all types of other oppression, including housing inequality. And so we've worked tirelessly to make sure that we lift that up in our advocacy. And in terms of like who we're working with, Ashley asked earlier, in terms of like who we're working with, water quality and whatnot. Seb, did you want to answer that question real quick?
Sure, and I think it goes to the next slide very well in terms of the city's solution and, green infrastructure versus gray infrastructure, which was also asked earlier.
Yeah.
And Friends of Gadsden Creek, there are many, many agencies that have, written in support of our work. Wendell Gilliard, the National Marine Fisheries Service, the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, as well as the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. So there's no lack of kind of scientific or environmentalist backing for this campaign. Specifically in terms of the water quality, a lot of the work we were doing was advocating for a non-biased test for pollutants in the water, which it took a very long time to get because the previous engineering report was by a firm on West Edge's payroll. And then finally, GEL Engineering did a water quality report that showed that Gadsden Creek is no more polluted than the Ashley River.
At all.
Yeah. So maybe that passes into this slide for you, Nika.
Yeah, and so the city solution, Seb, thank you for putting this up there. This is what you see right here. Pictured is the city solution to the flooding issue. What is important to understand is that the Dutch dialogues, I want to say the Dutch dialogues and the comprehensive plan
and the comprehensive plan and the climate action plan. Yeah.
And they suggest working with the creek. Y'all folks should remember the Big Dutch Dialogues production and the news it got and how the mayor went over to Amsterdam if you're familiar with that area. I know I visited this area, the canals and working with water and, these are leading voices in terms of how to really work in concert with nature. But yet for some reason, the city has chosen to ignore that common sense of advice that actually would suggest that we revitalize the creek and let it perform its function and help ease some of the problems there. And also, like Seb just referenced, the green infrastructure solutions that have been lifted up by those we're in community with, engineers. There are solutions. Thank you. There is an alternative to just building on it. We don't understand how building on a creek is going to actually help with flooding if we're already seeing what building on the creek has created over there. I don't get how that makes sense. But this slide right here is an illustration of how other areas have revitalized other similar bodies of water. And we know this happens here. It happened in Colombia. Right. So it's not so much this impossible scenario. This is not us dreaming up a perfect world. This is actually happening throughout the country. And I wanted to lift up a piece from Kate Orff. This was in a New Yorker. I lifted this up on my daily live stream on Twitch, but I wanted to lift it up here. Gray infrastructure. Right. So the city is pro gray infrastructure. Think poured concrete. Think, heavy, dense things. Gray infrastructure. The dikes, dams, and seawalls that modern societies use to contain or control water is often insufficient and sometimes destructive. Green infrastructure, what we advocate for, by contrast, involves strategically deploying wetlands, dunes, mangrove forests, and reefs to reduce the threats of catastrophic flooding and coastal erosion. Again, that's from Kate Orff. That's from a New Yorker article. And she's someone who's out there showing how we can use green infrastructure, use natural materials to actually come up with solutions to help us with this climate crisis. That seawall, that's only addressing one aspect of the climate crisis. It's not a comprehensive approach, and you can see where I won't get into that, but I would just say that we need to look at ways to bring back greenery, flora and fauna, bring that back to the areas to help with the drainage issues. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. And yeah, Odessa, thanks for your comment. This is just a generic image from Google Images of just, if you type in daylighting creek, you'll see it done, in every city. It's just a very common kind of restoration tactic. So it's not specifically.
Yeah, and there are examples in Columbia, South Carolina, of some similar projects. Yeah.
So I think we have about 5 minutes left, so I'll maybe zoom through these to make sure that, if anyone has any questions, please drop them in the comments now so we can address them in the few minutes that we have. But in the meantime, we'll just show some more of our campaign's work. We staged an exhibition at Redux Contemporary Art Center that had a smartphone app that allowed you to explore the creek, a resource table with many of the things we were showing here for a deeper dive, an oral history booth for people to share their stories about growing up around the creek or in the Gadsden Green community, as well as a massive timeline of many of the documents we were talking about today. Yeah, Mika, you're on screen here. What was this?
And we've also again, our work is really I'm proud to know that our work is now award winning. So very recently we were granted we won the 2021 U.S. Water Prize Outstanding Artist, and this was due largely in part to the work led by a fellow Friends of Gadsden Creek leader or member, Mary, whose work in the schools in that area dates back a while. I don't even know the dates, but Mary's been in public schools. She's brought me into public schools in the Back to Green area. And what she's done is created relationships between herself and teachers, educators, and students. And she's created she's led many art initiatives. And so I was proud to co-present with her as we accepted our award for Outstanding Artist from the U.S. Water Prize.
Right on. And some of the work that we won the award for was our kind of artful activism approach to the campaign, and that, it's not just text, it's not just showing up at city council, but it's about getting creative, getting transformative visions onto paper. So oftentimes this can look like some of the examples here, making storybooks and working with youth to spread awareness on this issue. This anti-racist yoga and mindfulness fundraiser was really amazing. Music videos led by middle schoolers in the area, as well as college student artworks about the history of Gadsden Creek. And really hats off to Mary from the previous slide for doing a lot of this pioneering work. And I think we've kind of covered the environmental, social, and economic. So just want to make sure that we, lift up the calls to action. We have a tab on our website that's called Call to Action if you want to look at these later. But, like Mika was saying, it's really important if you want to get involved and make a difference to understand the history and understand the issue first, to have that framing. Speaking up, reaching out to allies. We have information for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, like a federal agency that the fate of this project in many ways lies with. So we have their information if you can write them a public comment. We encourage you to take a walking tour of Gadsden Creek. We have a guided video on our website, but if you also just familiarize yourself with the space on your own time, we encourage that. We have posters for print on our website that you can show your support with. And we also encourage you to get creative, think about your own communities, think about your own skills and how you might contribute. Because really, as we've been doing this, we haven't been following any kind of guidebook. We'll just have ideas and then execute them. So there's no difference between, us and you. We're just, citizens and concerned residents, the same as everyone here. And of course, yeah, we're on social media and encourage you to follow us. Yeah.
Good job, Seb.
Good job. You.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, Marilyn, you could stop the screen share if you like. We have, I think, 2 minutes left.
Thank you.
In case.
This is a good job. Good job. This is actually a good time. Anybody have any last questions and answers? We are definitely interested in that. We have a couple minutes that we could take some questions and answers, but thank you to our attendees who've been just flooding this with comments and questions, because this is actually good content, and this is what I wanted folks to do, to get educated about what's going on a local basis, what these community-based solutions are that are happening, and we do need help, but you have to come into the space respectfully and intentionally with active listening, and don't assume that folks aren't doing the work. Folks are doing the work. They just need support financially and volunteers. And you know, a lot of it does come down to financial to keep the work sustainable and keep it going. And you know, this is a big battle. When I found out about this, I think about a year ago, approximately, and then started doing my research to see the work that you guys have done. It's wonderful. But it also indicates the battle that you face every day in climbing that mountain, because this is systemic. This isn't by happenstance that these situations happen. It's very intentional and deliberate decisions made that harm, in our case, the Gullah community, but we see this in other areas also, up and down the coast and nationwide. But this is an opportunity for all of us to lend a hand, to step up and help. Seb and Mika, I really appreciate you guys coming out and being a part of this. Anything else we need to know before you two leave that you want to leave with us? Anything so we can get it? And y'all go to the website, you know.
Yeah, I want to double down on what Seb offered in the last couple of slides. Please visit the website. It's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you for running it across the bottom throughout the presentation. Please go there. But I would say this: please think critically whenever the city speaks about this creek. Think critically about what you're hearing and ask. You know, look to groups like us and some others for some insight, or always ask us questions, DM, email, please. But think critically. That remember, the city is part owner, has a profit motive. So they're, you know, so just think critically if the city says something about this creek. Yeah.
Yeah, so true. Very good. Seb, any other words?
No, I think that's a great ending.
You're good.
Thanks for having us.
Right. Oh, thank you for coming. I appreciate it, y'all. I am also an ally. We're going to reach out more, what we can do anytime. Every second Wednesday, we have environmental and energy conversations on A Gathering Place, our semi-weekly online talk show. You guys are welcome to come on. I'll email you the open dates through January, and come back on and keep our audience informed. And I am going to push people to provide resources and help, so that you guys have sustainability in this fight. And you know, the more people who show up doing this work, the more influence, because we know these institutions like to say, well, only 10 people showed up, so people really don't care. And but people do care. But we also understand there are a lot of people out here who are just surviving.
That's right.
You know, and it is our job as community leaders, and we are all community leaders when we stand up, and elected officials, to meet people where they are and make sure that they are heard and seen. And that's what every human being wants. They want to be heard and seen and not wiped out. And this is a situation in Gadsden Green. It's literally an attempt to wipe out an entire community.
There you go. And the history.
Yeah. And we need to stand up and say no. We really do. I love it. Thank you guys for coming home. I appreciate it. Y'all go forth and have lunch, because we're going to have lunch too.
All right. Take care, Mariana.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
have
you,
a good
everyone.
one.
Okay.
Y'all, wonderful. I'm glad that you all are enjoying the spaces that we're providing for you. And we've noted the website at the bottom. Please, I hope that you had time to write it down, friendsofgasdencreek.com. Stay in touch, get involved. We know it's a lot of work out there to be done, folks, but this is why we have these spaces happening. So this is what we're going to do now, y'all. We're going to let y'all go to lunch. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Y'all can eat with us, and we'll get rolling with lunch and have a kind of hangout session with lunch and get started with the keynote. with lunch. But go ahead right now, grab your lunch and get ready for the keynote. And we will see you in about 10 minutes. All right, folks. Thank you very much.